Yo, what's going on, Vancouver? Welcome to the Vancouver Fitness Podcast. In this episode, we're talking about the 5 best supplements that you should be taking. Last episode, we talked about the worst supplements that you shouldn't be taking. So this is kind of like a flip, and we're going to talk about the best ones and the ones that we see the most results, and also the ones that we trust the most. By the way, if you don't know me, my name is Josko, and I am the host of this podcast and one of the owners at Kraken. And sitting across from me is Brandon Nye,
who's a strength and conditioning coach, jiu-jitsu black belt, and the co-owner of Kraken Fitness. And together, we've helped thousands of people across the Lower Mainland achieve their performance and body composition goals. So, welcome to the podcast.
And roll the intro. So in the last episode, what we were talking about was the worst supplements, and part of the reason why they were the worst supplements is because those companies can just not be trusted. The companies that make them cannot be trusted. They have like proprietary blends inside, and also they've been sued multiple times. So that's why we just completely avoid them altogether. In this episode, we're talking about ones that you can trust and ones that are actually beneficial for you and also well studied. And when I say well studied, I mean they have like massive amounts of people that were inside their studies, and also for a long duration of time. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. And I think the first one that we have on the list is vitamin D. And something that I just wanted to mention about vitamin D, that it's actually not even a vitamin. It's considered a hormone.
Yeah, why do you think they do that?
I think it's a marketing gimmick, or I'm not entirely sure why they do that.
To just take more of your hormone is not like appeasing to most people.
Wasn't there like some kind of like orange juice that you could drink in the past, and they were like, it was called like D or something, remember?
I think it was vitamin C, actually.
Vitamin C, yeah, okay, I think you're right. I think it was vitamin C. Tang,
and it had the monkey on it.
Okay, yeah. It's a vague memory for me. It's just like childhood. I don't think it exists anymore, though.
But it has nothing to do with vitamin D.
Yeah. And so vitamin D, I currently am not taking it. I will start taking it as soon as it gets a little bit darker outside, which it is right now, but I feel that you should try to minimize your toxic load by taking as little supplements as possible for multiple reasons. One, you don't really know what's inside it. And two, it might be an unnecessary amount. So that's why I try to take as little as possible. Last time we were mentioning kind of Joe Rogan and how he just takes the kitchen sink and like he has like millions of different supplements. And then also like just within the supplement itself, like for example, like he is a huge fan of Athletic Greens. There's like hundreds of stuff inside Athletic Greens. And so I want to minimize the amount of shit I'm taking. So that's the biggest thing for me and why I don't take vitamin D all year, but I will take vitamin D again.
Yeah, and we are having a bit of a conversation off the microphone actually about taking vitamin D. And if you're from Vancouver, because you're listening to this podcast, it's very common for you to have like some seasonal disorder, right?
Yeah.
Where you're not getting as much sunlight during the fall and winter months. It's just raining and crappy all year round. So you're not actually getting that vitamin D from the sun. So that's probably the best time to start supplementing with vitamin D. Personally, I take anywhere between like 2,000 to 5,000 IUs. It would be better if I actually had a blood panel before the season and after the season to see if that's actually where I optimally want to be. But for me, that's what kind of works best for me. What about you?
So I would take probably around like 2 to 5 as well. And then as I kind of like go into the deeper months, December, January, probably take more, less closer to the summer. But that's another thing too with vitamin D. There's huge amounts of people who say you should be taking like 10,000 or 20,000 IU, and they're like, it doesn't really matter how high you go. But I don't agree with that for sure. I don't think you should just go as high as possible because you don't know what it's affecting inside your body.
Right. And vitamin D is a fat-soluble hormone, or vitamin, sorry.
Yeah,
so
hormone.
you're actually going to need fat to excrete it. So you have to be really careful of how much you're taking. And also you need to know like how much fat you're ingesting in your regular diet from day to day. By the way, if you're liking this podcast, please do us a favor and tag us on Instagram at Coach Kraken or at Vancouver Fitness Podcast. We have nothing to sell you. All we're trying to do is give a platform to the fitness experts in Vancouver, a voice. And without further ado, back to the podcast.
not to confuse everybody right now, but also just understanding that there isn't just one form of vitamin D. Like we take, yeah, sure, vitamin D3, but then within that, the context of like supplementation, vitamin D3 is something like it can be multiple different versions of vitamin D3 as well. And I can't remember the exact vitamin D that we're using inside supplement, but it was like somebody who did some study said that this is the best form, and that's like what everybody's kind of going off of. So you don't even know if that guy's right
until proven wrong, right?
Yeah.
That's science.
And I think there are people who are actively trying to prove him wrong. Like I posted a Instagram reel about vitamin D, and then somebody commented and said like, oh, you shouldn't be taking vitamin D because of this and this reason. You should listen to what this guy says. And there's this guy who studied vitamin D a lot. I can't remember his name, but he says that you shouldn't be taking vitamin D because of multiple reasons. One, like when we measure vitamin D inside blood, that's serum vitamin D, and you don't know how much vitamin D is inside your tissue. So, and you don't even know if it's the right one, if we're actually converting it into the thing that you want. So there's multiple reasons why you shouldn't be overdoing vitamin D, and one of those is a good reason.
Right. And just like anything, you always need to go and actually get blood tests for yourself, because 10,000 for you may be different for 10,000 for me.
Mm-hmm, totally.
Right. And you don't know what your current levels are first. So go and get that checked out. And then also, when you get a blood panel done, you'll probably need to have it done within another 6 months to another year to see whether your supplementation or lack of supplementation is making a difference. That blood panel is merely a picture or a snapshot of what is currently going on
in that day, that hour. Because that's another thing too. Like you should be maybe even potentially mixing it with taking hair mineral analysis as well, and checking there. I'm not sure if you can see vitamin D levels. I think you can. And then making decisions from there, because that will show you how much is inside your tissue, and also to give you a snapshot of the last 3 months as opposed to the last like just that moment of in your blood. Yeah. So vitamin D, I think it's a good supplement to take, and it's definitely like a very well studied supplement. So I think that's why everybody should be taking it at some capacity. And then the next one we have here is creatine monohydrate. And we say monohydrate because that's the one that's the most studied. The other ones aren't as studied, but I'm sure it's probably the same thing. And but monohydrates usually is the most studied, and that's why we take it. And I found really, really good results with taking 5 grams per day. But when I first started taking creatine monohydrate, I started with 2 grams. So I recommend obviously starting with as little as possible, and then kind of like building up from there and see how you react to it. A lot of people will say like, oh, you should be loading creatine monohydrate for like 20 days or something, 20 grams for 20 days, just so you can like really saturate your blood. But I think that's like probably, I think there's only a few studies that showed that you should be doing that. Other than that, I think you could just take a normal amount, because the thing is with creatine monohydrate, there's people who get like diarrhea, and there's also people who take creatine monohydrate and to get constipation as well. So, and also you're taking 20 grams of creatine monohydrate, you're going to be thirsty.
That's a lot of creatine in one day.
Yeah.
But I think the protocol that's been studied is 20 grams of creatine for 5 days straight for that like really rapid loading. But I find that when people go through that really rapid loading, that's when they experience that extreme amount of bloating. Mm-hmm. So if you want to avoid that kind of bloating, then the protocol would be 5 grams every day for 28 days. Mm-hmm. And then you're going to reach some level of actual full saturation. And then from that point, there's no point of taking more. You're like already fully saturated, and you're just like wasting money at that point.
Yeah. And I bet you anything that creatine study was probably made to like have creatine companies make a little bit more money.
Yeah. But there's some really good research coming out right now about how creatine is helping some people with their mental health, or some artists or authors are using this actually to gain a mental advantage, not just a physical advantage, which is really cool to see.
Yeah. Creatine, I think, has been shown to help with your brain for sure. So yeah, even if you're not and also the biggest thing is like retaining muscle. So as you kind of go into old age, it'll help you with your brain, and it'll also help you retain muscle, which like after like 40, 50, it's something that you should be really considering. So this is whether or not you're working out. to take creatine monohydrate.
Yeah, I've noticed a huge difference for my weightlifting and my jiu-jitsu when I am taking creatine.
Yeah.
I just have a little bit more of a pep to my step. I do gain maybe 1 to 2 more pounds than I normally would in water retention.
Mm-hmm.
However, I think that trade-off is well worth it. Like, I'm able to push a little bit more weight in the gym. I feel like I'm able to recover a little bit faster within the same workout, that is. Yeah, it's worked wonders for me.
So yeah, let's kind of go into that, like kind of like our experiences within how we feel. So I do like taking supplements that have a noticeable effect. Otherwise, I'm like, what's the point of taking this? So creatine monohydrate, I do notice. So first of all, when I first started taking 2 grams, a little bit of dry mouth, kind of went away after like 3 days. But once I bumped it up to 5 grams, I noticed that I was going to the washroom multiple times per day. I was way thirstier, but I started to notice, like probably around like day 10, that I'm able to like flex harder and like squeeze my muscles harder. And then all of a sudden it started getting a little bit stronger. And then also the fatigue didn't hit as fast with my muscles, so I was able to like push them for longer. And then so therefore I was getting stronger faster, and then of course building more muscle. But you said you gained about 2 pounds. For me, I think I gained about 5 pounds after taking creatine monohydrate and keeping my calories somewhat the same. So I think that it depends on the person. Obviously, people are going to have different effects, and that's why you start with little and add more. And then if you're not working out, you probably don't need 5 grams.
Yeah. Do you feel like you still had that dry mouth and you were still going to the washroom after you've been fully loaded or accommodated after a while? Yeah.
Yeah, after I fully loaded myself.
Yeah.
I don't go to the washroom as much, and everything's kind of like balanced now.
So it was just do that initial phase.
Yeah, it was the initial phase, and yeah, now it's totally fine. Yeah, so I didn't really notice anything. I don't really notice anything now, but I did notice, and that's what would before when I tried 5 grams. That's what would freak me out, because I believe that I'm a little bit more creatine sensitive than most. It would freak me out. Like I'm noticing these huge changes, and then there's like guys like you who start taking 5 grams, and then nothing happens. You're just like normal. You don't get like super dry or anything.
I felt like I was on the other side where I was like not as creatine sensitive, because I've tried to take it when I was like a teenager or even in my early 20s. And well, I wasn't as consistent with taking it. I didn't notice that big of a difference. Like I didn't really gain any water retention, nor did I gain any kind of strength. But as I took 5 grams every day, like religiously for 2 to 3 months, that's when I started to actually notice it.
Yeah. So it took you 3 months to finally notice?
I would say
effects?
Now I kind of notice it a little bit more because I'm a little bit more introspective of how I feel.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say after a good month to a month and a half, then I actually feel the difference on it.
Yeah. So yeah, mine was more immediate. But more reason to just be careful, not to add too much, and not to add too much right away, and just to kind of take it slowly, for sure. So the next one we have on here is magnesium. Oh, so actually, I just wanted to talk about something with the effects, feeling the effects, before I dive into the next one. So one of the supplements that I stopped taking because I didn't notice the effects of it, even though it has some studies and there's a huge amount of people that take it, is glucosamine. So because of jiu-jitsu, fingers hurt all the time. Start taking magnesium or glucosamine, and then everybody says you should take it, but I didn't really notice any effects. I stopped taking it probably after a year of taking it, and there was no extra pain in my fingers. It was still just completely normal.
It's good that you are, again, introspective on that point where you say, like, I'm taking this one thing, and you basically isolate that one variable and see if it's actually making a difference for you. Mm-hmm. And if it's not, stop taking it.
Yeah, 1 year of taking it is like more than enough time to like see like if there's effects. Stop taking it, see if there's any like downsides, and if there isn't, then just stop taking it altogether. And then I got one of my clients who was taking it for 4 years. She's in her 60s. Is stopped taking. I told her like, hey, I didn't really notice any effects with it. Stop taking it, and she said that she didn't notice any effects after she stopped taking it as well. So it's like 4 years of taking this worthless supplement
just because someone told her she should.
Which could be throwing other things out of balance. So yeah, that's why I probably shouldn't take it. But yeah, anyway, so creatine monohydrate, I like it because I feel it. But so with so the next one is magnesium, and we talked about kind of like taking magnesium biglycinate, which is the more bioavailable form. And also, not only is it more bioavailable, it also doesn't have the side effects of like softening your stool as much. I think all magnesium supplements will soften your stool. Yes. So that's why we say like magnesium citrate, just be careful with it, even though it is very bioavailable as well. But magnesium biglycinate doesn't seem to have that effect. So that's why I take it. And also it's still bioavailable. And I feel it I feel it more than citrate, even though that's not what the studies show. Studies show that they're pretty much the same from what I can see.
Yeah. So for those who don't know, magnesium, it's a cofactor in a lot of bodily reactions. So it's really good for like
I think like
recovery.
thousands of reactions.
Tons.
Yeah,
tons.
and really responsible for ATP as well.
Yep.
So and ATP is responsible for your energy. So that's why magnesium is really important,
especially if you're working out really hard and
yeah.
you're experiencing lots of DOMs sometimes.
So magnesium, before I think it was in the ground, and then now after years of monoculture and just farming, like the magnesium isn't in the soil anymore. So that's why we don't get it in our food. And our the ruminant animals that are supposed to be eating it are also not getting it. So therefore we're not getting it at all. And that's why it's important to supplement it with magnesium. We just don't have enough of it. We don't get enough of it in our water, in our tap water. So because before you used to drink out of springs, right? And then they'd have magnesium inside. Now we don't. We just drink tap water, which is just like extremely filtered. And like God knows what else is inside our tap water now.
One thing I've noticed that it helps a lot with is sleep.
Yes.
And sometimes when I'll take some form of magnesium before sleep, I have the deepest sleeps I've ever had.
That's a huge reason. So if you were to take magnesium, take it before bed. Yeah. And so I find that, 60 to 90 minutes before bed, fall asleep right away, stay asleep.
And you wake up like dead. Like I almost feel groggy when I come up out of sleep after I've supplemented with magnesium.
Yeah, so with magnesium before bed, lots of people feel that like when they're waking up, they feel like that they had like a really deep sleep and it's hard. But then it's kind of the same thing with creatine. Like after you kind of saturate, you start getting less effects of it. It's not that maybe your body's getting used to it, maybe it's utilizing it better. And so therefore you don't get those like super grogginess in the morning. Like, do you still experience that?
I would say so because I don't continually take it, but I'll usually take it when I've gone through like really hard bursts of training.
So how come you don't take it?
Down.
How come you don't take it on a daily basis?
Just because I don't want to wake up and feel groggy all the time, actually.
Yeah.
But I not to say it's not useful. What actually I find very useful is if I'm feeling really sore is like an Epsom salt bath that has that level of magnesium in it too.
Yeah, so you can actually get magnesium baths as well that just have magnesium inside instead of Epsom salts. So apparently those are really good because the best way to absorb magnesium is actually through your skin. How did it, derma? They're like absorbing it derma. I can't remember the word. Yeah, we're just big podcast guys. Like we don't really know the science behind things.
We're meatheads.
We just look at like what everybody like people who are really smart, and then we just unfortunately we don't we're not that smart. So yeah, you absorb it better through the skin or something like that, or like it's best absorbed through the skin. So that's why magnesium baths are really good. But I assume that you'd probably get the exact same effects if you did it before bed.
Yeah, especially if it's like a warm bath and then you hop into bed after. I'm out like a light.
Yeah, I don't take baths. I don't think I've taken a bath since I was like 3 years old. And
you should try it sometime.
I should. The only reason why I don't is because it takes like
too much time.
Yeah,
to fill
way
the
too
tub.
much time.
That's part of the relaxing process, you know,
Mm-hmm.
laying in there and doing nothing.
So the next one is salt and electrolytes, which kind of like is together with magnesium. But yeah, supplementing with salt, meaning like putting salt on your food, has shown really, really good effects for pretty much everyone. You should be salting your food. And the way that I always look at it is just like salt to taste. Don't put an excessive amount, but if it tastes better with salt, then yeah, that's probably good.
And we went over this in the past podcast when we were talking about worse supplements. And we were talking about like sport concoction drinks. And when you actually need them is if you're really losing a lot of water and more specifically sweat, because that's going to come with loss of electrolytes as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I think salt has been demonized by the food industry for the past 10 to 20 years. especially with people who are sedentary populations who have an increased amount of salt and they think it's going to increase their blood pressure. But for athletic populations, it's actually very beneficial to supplement with salt because now our food is absent of salt.
Another thing with salt is, you can really tell when something doesn't have enough salt inside. And you can tell right away when something has too much salt inside. And you just have to salt it to just taste. And then that's your body just listening to your body and just saying like, okay, this is what I need.
And some people...
So it's really easy to supplement.
Some people, when they feel like they're always like really dehydrated, it's not really the matter of like continually just drinking more and more water. Because if you don't have that salt level, you're not going to actually retain it. You're just going to flush it all out. You actually need some level of salt to retain that water.
So another thing too is you'll find that you need more salt and electrolytes in the winter when it's drier outside. So that's another thing too. It's not necessarily that you're losing it through sweat, but it could be also just because it's hot or dry or both.
One of the biggest losses of hydration is actually through your breath.
Yeah.
That's like one of the main ways that you're actually losing hydration while you're sleeping in a really dry place is you're breathing all that out. So not only are you like sweating while you're sleeping, but you're also breathing that loss of moisture as well.
Yeah, so that's why it's not necessarily just because you're being active. It could be also just your environment as well. Obviously, we're like in AC all the time now, and so that could be another reason why you're really dry. So yeah, like it's really important to make sure that you're supplementing with that, regardless of exercise. But like you mentioned before, like those like sport concoction drinks, like that's like unnecessary because you could literally just put salt on your food.
I've been noticing a lot. You've been drinking a lot more coconut water too, as well.
I drink coconut water because I think that the only way. So I look at like how hydrated I feel after drinking something. And so let's say, for example, after jiu-jitsu, if I were to drink a shitload of water, just plain water, I have to drink a lot of fucking water in order for me to be able to feel hydrated. But with coconut water, I could have like 200 mils and I'm like, okay, I'm good. I don't need to drink any more than this. And I think it's a combination of the sugar and the electrolytes inside the liquid that actually helps you replenish it, not necessarily the actual H2O itself. I think doctors right now, they're saying like you should have 8 cups of water per day, which is an absurd amount. And also in the bodybuilding world right now, like people are drinking like 6 liters of water per day, which is an absurd amount. Like that's so much. You're forcing yourself to drink. And that's another thing that people say is like, you should be drinking even when you're not thirsty. By the time you're thirsty, like it's already too late. It's like, what? Like, no. And
you can generally tell how hydrated you are by the frequency of how often you're going to pee, or even just the color of your pee as well.
Exactly, yeah. So another thing too is if you were to look at what kind of drinks offer the most amount of hydration, like feeling hydrated after drinking it, you'll find that water is actually very low. The thing that it has the most hydration is actually Coca-Cola. And I think it has something to do with the sugar inside the water. And also, yeah, some salt. I don't know how much salt it has inside. Does it?
I feel like it does have a little bit of salt.
But yeah, if you were to look at like I'm just gonna hydration. I don't know how to even search that. But yeah, I think it was not coconut water. They didn't test that, but it's probably the same as Coca-Cola. But Coca-Cola was huge. Oh, and the other one was orange juice, which has a lot of minerals inside. So orange juice and also has a lot of sugar inside.
Right.
So that's why I think coconut water hydrates better than other forms of just like liquid when it doesn't have. Oh, and then also another one was milk, has a lot. So hydrates. Like I don't know if you don't drink milk, but
I wish
it's
I could.
Weird because you what?
I wish I could.
Yeah.
I used to drink so much milk, but now I can't. Lactose intolerant.
When you're really thirsty and like it's like milk really quenches your thirst.
Boy, do I miss that. Dude, I used to come home from soccer practice and just down 3 or 4 glasses of milk.
I'm just looking up right now, like to see like the hydration levels part.
Yeah, no, the reason why I was kind of interested on your coconut water intake, because like coconut water, people know it's like hydrating. However, it has more levels of potassium than salt sometimes.
Yeah, and that's true. And most people are deficient in potassium.
Right. So when we say electrolytes, people automatically assume it's only salt. But electrolytes is other kind of minerals, such as, and usually the main two ones are salt and potassium. And it's the balance between salt and potassium that's going to maintain your hydration.
So we got, skim milk, full fat milk, and we have oral rehydration solution. I don't know what that is.
It's like those Nunes?
Yeah, maybe, I guess so.
It must be.
And then, these are all compared to still water, and even like cola is better. But the best one seems to be like between like orange juice and milk, which is crazy.
So something with some kind of level of sugar in it.
Yeah, it seems, or like some kind of like calories in it, I guess.
Right. It makes sense.
Yeah. So yeah, I think it is hard for your body just to kind of like, doesn't know what to do with water. And I do find that like if I need to get hydrated, I need to drink way more water than if I were to just have like some like liquid, some liquid with calories inside and minerals. So yeah. But then again, also you have to just be careful not to gain weight with that because it could be overdoing it with calories.
Yeah, because liquid calories are super easy to consume. And then before you know it, you've consumed 300, 400, 500 calories in one sitting of Coca-Cola.
Yeah, and that's another thing too that I just want to like mention with water. I know it's kind of off topic, but you know, like people will say like, oh, to feel more full, you have to drink water with your meal. But then I'm pretty sure it's harder for your body to digest the actual calories. It's easier for your body to digest food that when it comes in just the food form, unless you're having something like really dry, like potato chips, then you're going to have to drink it with water. That's why you get thirsty. But for the most part, you shouldn't be drinking with your meals. Maybe just a tiny, tiny bit. So being careful not to overdo water. People overdo water. It's crazy.
Well, you ever see that one contest where someone, I think it was a radio station podcast, and they were like, oh, whoever drank the most water in like 24 hours
and
wins a car.
And doesn't go to the washroom. Yeah.
And doesn't go to the washroom. And then someone
the
died because they offset the amount of like salt in their blood from drinking too much water and died. Which goes to show, like, with supplements, with anything, there's an upper level of how much you can take, so you should be really careful. Like even water, like water is one of the most essential things to all life. And even if you drink too much of that, you die.
Mm-hmm. And so another thing too is like look at how frequently you go to the washroom. If you're going to the washroom more than once per night, I think that you have an issue with drinking too much water, or with electrolyte imbalance. And then also, if you're going to the washroom often throughout the day, that's an issue too. Because if you think about it, like no human in the past would want to go to the washroom every hour. That's absurd.
Yeah, you don't want to lose your hydration.
Yeah,
especially if you're in like a desolate place, you don't want to just be wasting away your hydration.
Yeah.
One of the leading causes of death in the world is actually like diarrhea. Because if like people are dying from dysentery, basically, you're losing your water hydration through your bowels.
Yeah, totally. And there's so much more that we can get into talking about poo, but I think we're already 28 minutes in, so yeah, so those are we'll go over like the top 4 again that we talked about today. So we got vitamin D, creatine monohydrate, magnesium biglycinate, and salt and electrolytes, and you'll find that it has nothing to do with any other like branded supplements like that people were taking before. Like all of these supplements have like
generic brands.
Yeah, and like extremely cheap. So yeah, start taking those. Those are probably safe for you to take even without taking a blood test. But our recommendation is always to talk to a naturopath first to make sure that you are actually needing to take these things. And yeah, that's pretty much it for this podcast. Thanks for tuning in, guys, and we'll see you in the next one.